nations, exposing it to a cruel psychological war. With absolute disrespect for the Charter of the United Nations and international law, including relevant resolutions adopted by this Council and by the General Assembly, on January the 3rd, United States military forces attacked Venezuela. An unacceptable and barbaric act kidnapped its legitimate president, Nicolas Maduro, and his companion, Celia Flores. Cuba condemns in the strongest terms the military aggression of the United States against Venezuela, while categorically reiterating its absolute support and solidarity with the Venezuelan people, and joins the demand that the government of the United States release the constitutional president, Nicolas Maduro Moros, and his companion, Celia Flores. In the criminal attack perpetrated by the United States, 32 Cubans lost their lives in combat actions. They were carrying out missions on behalf of the Revolutionary Armed Forces and the Ministry of the Interior at the request of counterpart bodies of that country. Our compatriots honorably fulfilled their duty and fell after fierce resistance in direct combat against the attackers or as a result of the bombings of the facilities. Through their heroic actions, they upheld the solidarity sentiments of millions of our compatriots. Mr. President, the cowardly U.S. aggression against Venezuela is a criminal act in violation of international law and the UN Charter. It constitutes a dangerous escalation of the sustained war campaign waged for years by the United States against that sister nation, which intensified since September 2025 with the aggressive naval deployment in the Caribbean Sea under mendacious pretexts and unfounded accusations without any evidence whatsoever. The U.S. military attack against Venezuela has no justification whatsoever. It does not respond to any provocation, nor does it possess legitimacy. It is based on the aberrant doctrine of peace through force and undermines the stability and peace that have characterized our Latin American and Caribbean region for years. It seeks to promote a change in the constitutional order of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, freely chosen by its people. Its ultimate objective is not the false narrative of combating drug trafficking, but control over Venezuela's land and natural resources, as has been openly and shamelessly declared by President Trump and his Secretary of State. This is an imperialist and fascist aggression with objectives of domination that seeks to revive the U.S. hegemonic ambitions over our America, anchored in the outdated Monroe Doctrine. It also seeks to intimidate and subjugate the governments of Latin America and the Caribbean. Cuba calls for an urgent reaction from the international community against this criminal attack on Venezuela, a peaceful nation that does not attack the United States or any other country. We call on all governments, parliaments, social movements, and peoples of the world to condemn the U.S. military aggression against Venezuela and to confront this act of state terrorism that threatens international peace and security and seeks to impose a new doctrine of U.S. imperialist domination in Latin America and the Caribbean and in the world. Mr. President, the recent statements about imperialist plans to steer Venezuela toward a supposed safe, appropriate and prudent transition are totally unacceptable. In the U.S. vision of domination, this means imposing a puppet government functional to its predatory goals, particularly unrestricted access to and plundering of natural resources that, by right, belong to the Venezuelan people. Determining the destiny of Venezuela is an exclusive right of its people without external interference. If the U.S. government, lacking any moral authority whatsoever, truly cared about the peace, freedom and justice of Venezuelan men and women, it would not have bombed that territory with absolute disregard for the lives, sovereignty and territorial integrity of that nation. I conclude by reaffirming our unwavering adherence to the proclamation of Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace, and by calling for action with the firmness and determination that current circumstances demand, always in defense of international law and of a future of peace for all the peoples of our America and of the world. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Cuba for the statement. And now give the floor to the representative of Nicaragua.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
América Latina
Latin America and the Caribbean is a zone of peace,
declarada por la Comunidad de Estados
declared
Latinoamericanos
by the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC, on behalf of all of the peoples and governments of our region. This zone of peace must be fully respected by all governments of the world without exception, and in particular by the members of this Security Council responsible for international peace and security. This decision, these desires and aspirations of our peoples are a noble contribution to world peace, to international law, and to the United Nations Charter.
Señor Presidente, Nicaragua respalda lo expresado por la Presidenta interina de Venezuela, Delcy Rodríguez, que pide la liberación inmediata del Presidente constitucional y legítimo de Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, y la primera combatiente de la patria, Cilia Flores. Todos los Estados miembros de Naciones Unidas tenemos el deber de respetar el derecho internacional, el espíritu, los propósitos y principios de la Carta de Naciones Unidas, el derecho a la soberanía, autodeterminación, integridad territorial de los Estados, la no injerencia, la convivencia pacífica. El pueblo venezolano es el pueblo digno de Bolívar, de Chávez, de Maduro, e históricamente indoblegable, que defiende su soberanía y su derecho a la paz. Nicaragua siempre estará con Venezuela. La paz ha sido profundamente herida y la familia humana, la comunidad de naciones, los pueblos del mundo, urgimos que se reinstale como absoluto reflejo de la dignidad de todos los pueblos. Muchas gracias.
Respect the dignity of all peoples. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Nicaragua for the statement, and now give the floor to the representative of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you, Mr. President. The delegation of Trinidad and Tobago thanks the Security Council for convening this urgent meeting following the recent developments in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. My delegation addresses this council today as a Caribbean nation, a neighbor of Venezuela, and a long-standing advocate for peaceful coexistence and the rule of law. The government of Trinidad and Tobago has taken note of the military operations undertaken by the United States in Venezuela. We remain committed to cooperative efforts led by the United States to disrupt and dismantle networks that enable transnational crime across the Americas, whose activities have had debilitating effects on the security and stability of the region. Trinidad and Tobago remains steadfast in its support of the United States of America's initiatives that strengthen regional security, reinforce the rule of law, and safeguard the well-being of our societies, the Americas. The government of Trinidad and Tobago, while valuing its long-standing and robust partnership with the United States, remains equally committed to maintaining a constructive and respectful relationship with the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and continues to uphold peaceful relations with the people of Venezuela. The delegation of Trinidad and Tobago wishes to underscore its long-standing relationship with both the United States and Venezuela, and stands ready to work collaboratively with all partners who share the aspiration of a safer, more prosperous and stable hemisphere. Mr. President, I thank you.
I thank the representative of Trinidad and Tobago, and now give the floor to the representative of Spain.
Señor Presidente, en primer lugar, me gustaría felicitarle por la asunción de la presidencia mensual del Consejo de Seguridad de Naciones Unidas y desearle todo el éxito en el desempeño de sus funciones. Agradezco la convocatoria de esta importante reunión y también transmito mi agradecimiento a la secretaria general adjunta y jefa del Departamento de Asuntos Políticos y Consolidación de la Paz de las Naciones Unidas, señora Di Carlo, por la información proporcionada en el día de hoy. España expresa su profunda preocupación por lo ocurrido en Venezuela, que, como ha señalado el secretario general de las Naciones Unidas, constituye un precedente muy preocupante para la región y para el mundo. El respeto a los principios de la Carta de Naciones Unidas, en particular a la soberanía e integridad territorial de los Estados y a la prohibición del uso y amenaza de la fuerza, es indispensable para garantizar la convivencia internacional. España defiende la vigencia de un orden internacional basado en reglas, donde resulta imperativo apostar, como recoge el artículo 2.3 de la Carta, por el arreglo pacífico de las controversias. Consideramos que estas acciones constituyen un precedente muy preocupante para la paz y la seguridad regional, y recordamos que los recursos naturales del país son parte de su soberanía. Compartimos que la lucha contra el crimen organizado en la región es una prioridad, pero esa lucha solo puede hacerse mediante la cooperación internacional. Compartimos también que es prioritario defender los derechos humanos y las libertades públicas en Venezuela. España quiere trabajar por la paz, la estabilidad, la democracia, el progreso y la justicia social. Y eso no puede venir impuesto por la fuerza. Eso solo puede venir a través de un diálogo extenso entre venezolanos, con una solución venezolana pacífica y democrática, que sea la voz del pueblo venezolano la que marque el destino de Venezuela. España no reconoció el resultado de las últimas elecciones celebradas en Venezuela en julio de 2024 y ha sido contundente su condena de cualquier violación y amenaza a los derechos humanos. Ha dado protección a aquellos líderes opositores que han sido perseguidos y ha mostrado un firme rechazo a cualquier conducta antidemocrática y abuso contra la ciudadanía. Pero esta condena solo puede ejercerse desde el respeto a la legalidad internacional. España trabajará por unir a los venezolanos y venezolanas y apuesta por el diálogo y la paz, porque la fuerza jamás trae más democracia. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Spain, and I now give the floor to the representative of South Africa.
Thank you, Mr. President. We wish to congratulate the Federal Republic of Somalia for assuming the rotating presidency of the United Nations Security Council for the month of January, and wish you and your delegation all the best in the execution of your responsibilities. We also wish to thank you for convening this debate and affording all UN member states to participate, because the situation in Venezuela concerns all UN member states, given its implications for the credibility of the UN Charter and international law. Mr. President, integral to the maintenance of international peace and security since the establishment of the United Nations is the understanding that no nation can claim to be legally or morally superior to another. We are all nations born out of different histories and contexts, ascribing to the common values and principles enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. Chief amongst these principles is the sovereign equality of all its members. By signing the Charter, we have all committed to settle our international disputes by peaceful means in such a manner that international peace, security, and justice are not endangered. We have also committed to refrain in our foreign relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes and principles of the United Nations. The International Court of Justice has also previously affirmed that international law prohibits the use of force and intervention in another state's affairs. Due to the shortcomings of its predecessor, the League of Nations, the UN was created to prevent countries from resorting to conflict, to settle disputes and prohibit the use of force unless it is done in a legally prescribed manner. In doing so, the UN has played a pivotal role in ensuring peaceful existence amongst nations, including in ending the colonial subjugation by powerful countries over others, underpinned by respect for the equal rights of nations, large and small, and respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples. Joining the organization and committing to its principles afforded protection to many of us with the supposed assurance that no longer would one nation be seen as inferior to another. Unfortunately, when countries ignore the Charter and act contrary to its central premise, it undermines the credibility of the entire system in which we all undertake our international relations. The stability of the international system depends not only on the respect, but on the consistent application of these established legal norms. We all benefit from a rules-based international order based on international law. When we break those norms, we invite anarchy and an environment where might makes right, ignoring the complexity of interrelations and interdependence in our modern world. Mr. President, the unilateral military strikes carried out by the United States of America against Venezuela and the abduction of President Nicolas Maduro and his spouse from Venezuelan territory for transfer to the United States wantonly violates the sovereignty and territorial integrity and independence of Venezuela. These actions are also in stark contrast to our established legal norms, reinforcing the belief that might is right and undermining diplomacy. History has repeatedly demonstrated that military invasions against sovereign states yield only instability and deepen crises. Unlawful unilateral force of this nature undermines the stability of the international order and the principle of equality among nations. Such use of force also undermines the institutional infrastructure established to regulate relations among nations. We have seen examples of these in Libya, Iraq, and countless cases in Africa where foreign interventions and interference create security crises and undermine national governance institutions cultivated through nuanced and complex national contexts. South Africa stresses that allegations of internal governance challenges, human rights concerns, or acts of criminality by a head of state cannot justify a breach of the Charter's prohibition on the use of force, particularly Article 2.4 of the Charter. The peaceful resolution of disputes and internal matters must proceed in accordance with international law and through multilateral mechanisms. Additionally, under international law, a state has exclusive jurisdiction over persons and conduct within its own territory. Any enforcement of domestic law, including arrest by one state within the territory of another state without the state's consent, is an unlawful violation of sovereignty. There are recourse mechanisms at the disposal of states to implement international law. This includes taking action by bringing a case before the International Court of Justice or seeking action from the Security Council. We note the statement issued by a group of concerned countries, mainly those in the Latin American region, most affected by the developments in Venezuela, which reiterates that the situation in Venezuela must be resolved exclusively through peaceful means, through dialogue, negotiation, and respect for the will of the Venezuelan people in all its expressions, without external interference and in accordance with international law. Mr. President, each one of our countries, including our peoples, that are members of this organization and that are bound to its charters, have the right to determine our own democratic and political path. This inherent charter-given right to self-determination cannot and should not be abrogated. If we do not stand up for the sovereign rights of any nations or states when they are undermined and wantonly violated, then which one of us are safe or are guaranteed protection by the principles of the Charter and international law? Failure to act decisively against such violations is a tantamount to inviting anarchy and normalizing the use of force and military might as the main form of discourse in international politics. This would be a regression into a world preceding the United Nations, a world that gave us two brutal world wars, and an international system prone to severe structural instability and lawlessness. We cannot afford to proceed into a complex future without the stability and protection afforded by international law. I thank you.
I thank the representative of South Africa for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Eritrea.
Thank you, Mr. President. Allow me at the onset to congratulate Your Excellency and the government of the Federal Republic of Somalia on assuming the presidency of the Security Council for the month of January. We also extend our congratulations to Bahrain, Colombia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Liberia, and Latvia on their election to the Security Council. As this is the first Security Council meeting of the year, allow me to pay tribute to the outgoing members, Algeria, Guyana, the Republic of Korea, Sierra Leone, and Slovenia, for their dedicated service and diligent work throughout the tenure of the Council. I read this statement on behalf of the Group of Friends in Defense of the United Nations Charter. The Group of Friends in Defense of the Charter of the United Nations condemns the most unequivocal and categoric manner the act of aggression perpetrated on 3rd January 2026 against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela by special forces of the United States of America, which included armed attacks against civilian and military objects in the capital city of Caracas, as well as in various other cities of the Venezuelan territory, and the illegal abduction of the President and First Lady of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, His Excellency Mr. Nicolas Maduro Moros, and Her Excellency Mrs. Celia Flores de Maduro. The member states of the Group of Friends in Defense of the Charter of the United Nations expressed their serious concern at the impact of these series of armed attacks, particularly on civilians and their human rights to life, which have included military assaults with U.S. Special Forces, while emphasizing that such acts constitute a clear breach of international law and of each and every principle governing international relations, including those foreseen in the Charter of the United Nations. The Group of Friends of the Charter of the United Nations reiterates its firm support to the constitutional government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela under the leadership of President Nicolas Maduro Moros, and emphasize the importance of ensuring strict respect for the inviolability of the immunities accorded to heads of states and government under international law, while renewing its unwavering solidarity with the Venezuelan people in their ongoing struggle for defending their homeland, including through the actions it may take within the framework of international law to exercise its inalienable right to self-defense. The member states of the Group of Friends in Defense of the Charter of the United Nations demand for the immediate cessation of all hostilities against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, for the full respect for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, political independence, and inalienable right to self-determination of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, for the immediate return of President Nicolas Maduro and First Lady Celia Flores de Maduro to the Venezuelan national territory, and for those responsible for these acts of aggression to be held accountable. The Group of Friends of the Charter of the United Nations firmly reject the remarks delivered by the President of the United States of America during the afternoon of 3rd January 2026, in which he not only threatened with additional airstrikes against the Venezuelan territory, but also claimed to resolve to occupy and govern the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and to exploit the natural resources and administer the wealth of that sisterly nation in what can only be described as the confession of a clear plan of annexation that foresees, among others, the complete obliteration of the inalienable rights of the Venezuelan people, as well as the fundamental rights of the Venezuelan state as a whole. The member states of the Group of Friends of the Defense of the Charter of the United Nations call on all relevant international bodies, including the Security Council and the General Assembly of the United Nations, to swiftly mobilize in order to uphold the purposes and principles enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations, and to urgently take appropriate measures to avoid further escalation of the situation on the ground, particularly additional acts of aggression against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and preserve both regional and international peace and security. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Eritrea for her statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Islamic Republic of Iran.
Thank you. In the name of God, the Compassionate and Merciful, thank you, Mr. President, for convening this emergency and important meeting. We acknowledge the presence of the Undersecretary General Mysticalo at this meeting and extend our appreciation to Professor Jeffrey Sachs for his informative and insightful briefing. At the outset, I would like to extend my warm congratulations to Somalia on its assumption of the presidency of the Security Council for this month. I also wish to warmly congratulate the newly elected members of the Council, Bahrain, Colombia, Republic of Congo, Latvia, and Liberia on their election. Mr. President, the Islamic Republic of Iran would like to associate itself with the statement delivered by Eritrea on behalf of the group of Friends in Defense of the Charter of the United Nations and wishes to make the following remarks in its national capacity. First, the Islamic Republic of Iran condemns in the strongest possible terms the military attack carried out by the United States of America against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. This illegal act constitutes a state terrorism, a manifest violation of Charter of the United Nations, particularly Article 2, Section 4, and Section 7, and peremptory norms of the international law, and amounts to an internationally wrongful act and a full-fledged act of aggression. Such military aggression against an independent member state of the United Nations establishes a serious breach of regional and international peace and security with far-reaching consequences for the international system as a whole. Second, the abduction of democratically elected president and the First Lady of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela by the United States constitute a flagrant violation of customary international law, including the principles of the inviolability of the immunities accorded to the heads of a state and government under international law, and represent a grave assault on the sovereign equality of states. The Islamic Republic of Iran recalls Venezuela's inherent right to self-defense and underscores the legal responsibility of the United Nations, in particular the Security Council, to take immediate measures to halt this unlawful aggression and to ensure accountability for all those responsible. Iran also affirms its full support for the people and legitimately elected government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Third, the United States is openly seeking to substitute its domestic law for international law and the Charter of the United Nations. This represents a serious warning to the international community and to all member states. Such unlawful conduct strikes at the very foundations of the Charter-based international legal order and establishes a dangerous precedent that must be categorically and unequivocally rejected. The so-called declared U.S. policy of peace through strength prescribed the law of the jungle and the rule of force instead of rule of law, and if tolerated and normalized, would render the collective security system established by the Charter ineffective and devoid of purpose. Fourth, the continued inaction and paralysis of the Security Council in the face of the explicit threat and act of aggression by the United States have fostered a dangerous climate of impunity. It has emboldened the United States to persist in unlawful conduct that poses a grave threat to regional and international peace and security. In recent days, the President of the United States had repeatedly issued public threat of the use of force against the Islamic Republic of Iran in manifest violation of Article 2 of the Charter of the United Nations. At the same time, the United States is shedding crocodile tears for the Iranian people and hypocritically claims to support them while maintaining a well-documented record of intervention, the use of force, and the imposition of unlawful unilateral coercive measures against Iran. This includes its direct political, military, and operational support and involvement for Israeli regime unlawful joint war of aggression against Iran between 13 and 24 June 2025, which resulted in loss of civilian life, attacks on civilian infrastructure, and serious violations of fundamental human rights of the Iranian people. Iran reaffirms its inherent right to defend its sovereignty, territorial integrity, and national security, and to protect its people against any foreign interference. The United States of America will bear full responsibility for consequences arising from its unlawful threats and any ensuing escalation. Finally, we unequivocally reject the baseless allegation and unwarranted reference made to Iran by the representative of the United States at this meeting. The facts on the ground are clear, speak loudly for themselves, and cannot be concealed by political rhetoric or manufactured narrative. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Islamic Republic of Iran and now give the floor to the representative of Uganda.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the Non-Aligned Movement, NAM, representing 121 member states united by the shared principle of respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all nations. The Coordinating Bureau of the Non-Aligned Movement, NAM, categorically condemns the act of aggression perpetuated by the United States of America against the Bolivian Republic of Venezuela since the early hours of 3rd January 2026, which included armed attacks against civilian and military locations in the capital city of Caracas, as well as in various other cities of the Venezuelan territory. The Coordinating Bureau of the Non-Aligned Movement notes that attacks in question, which blatantly violate the purposes and the principles enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations, as well as the norms of the international law, constitute an act of war against the Bolivian Republic of Venezuela that undermines both regional and international peace, security, and stability, while also threatening the very right to life of the Venezuelan people. Excuse me. The Coordinating Bureau of the Non-Aligned Movement demands the immediate cessation of all hostilities against the Bolivian Republic of Venezuela, the full respect of the sovereignty, territorial integrity, political independence, and inalienable rights to the self-determination of Bolivian Republic of Venezuela, and that those responsible for those ongoing acts of aggression to be held accountable. The Coordinating Bureau of the Non-Aligned Movement reaffirms the inviolability of the immunities accorded to the heads of states and government under international law, which constitute a fundamental pillar of sovereign equality, peace, coexistence, and stable international relations. These immunities, firmly rooted in customary international law and consistent with the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations, must be respected universally without discrimination, and any actions or measures that undermine or selectively disregard them risk eroding multilateralism, destabilizing international relations, and weakening the international legal order. Excuse me. Mr. President, the Coordinating Bureau of the Non-Aligned Movement reiterates its full solidarity with the people and government of the Bolivian Republic of Venezuela at this critical time, and insists that military solutions are not viable avenues for addressing any issues that may be of concern between members of the international community. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Uganda for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Cuba, who has asked for the floor to make a further statement.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Mr.
Señor
President.
presidente,
Mr. President,
mi delegación se ve obligada a hacer
my
uso de la
delegation
palabra
feels it must take
para
the floor
responder a las
again to
acusaciones
respond to the
infundadas
unfounded
formuladas por la delegación de
accusations
Estados
formulated
Unidos
by
contra
the
Cuba.
United States against
Resulta
Cuba.
indignante
It
que
is,
quienes han
we are
protagonizado
indignant that those
agresiones
that have
unilaterales
led
y
unilateral
violaciones
aggressions and
sistemáticas del derecho
systematic
internacional
violations of
pretendan
international law
erigirse en jueces de otros estados
pretend to
soberanos,
judge
lo
other
que en una
sovereign
actitud
states
absolutamente inmoral
with a
e
totally
irrespetuosa
immoral
e
and
irresponsable.
irresponsible attitude lacking respect. We fundamentally reject the accusations that Cuba has intelligence assets in Venezuela. These kinds of statements lack any factual base and are a clear attempt to take the eyes of the world off the criminal acts of the United States in the region. Cuba strictly respects the sovereignty, independence, and inalienable right of the Venezuelan people to decide their own destiny, as established by the United Nations Charter. Cooperation between both countries is in multiple spheres, has a legitimate basis, and is based on bilateral agreements signed by both parties, as has been declared by the revolutionary government. The 32 combatants that fell in terrorist acts perpetrated by the United States were in missions of the revolutionary forces at the request of Venezuela. Those patriots were heroic in their action, showing solidarity with millions of Cubans. These accusations attempt to suggest that Cuba is involved in this way in Venezuela. We categorically reject that. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Cuba for the statement. There is no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.
I don't have any word for you. Yeah. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to say it. Yeah. What's the tail number of that?
What's up, weirdos? Coin, VN, GFDF all together, what mean? Well, the price of the stock, like, crashed. So that's what it means. Oh, this hasn't been too bad. We tested 69.20. That was an important level. I don't know what the news was in the pre-market that caused the bigger move up. Did we say something about installing a legitimate government in Venezuela? To have something for that if we did. What's that green area above the US again? Oh, it's like grass and trees. Wait, Stephen Miller is married? Wait a second. She's not white. Sus. What's up, Thunder? Isn't Stephen Miller Jewish? Why is that insane? Wasn't she the Doge spokesperson? I have no idea. I can't tell if she's just like a white girl with way too much fake tan or Middle Eastern. I'm pretty sure he is. Yeah, he's very Jewish. Ariana? Oh my god, yeah. I cannot think of a time where we had trouble discriminating Middle Easterners from Westerners. No? What if you try really hard? A lot of Middle Eastern people are white, specifically Persians. I'm white in the US. I'm just not white in like Sweden. I tried to stick up for Katie Miller in chat once before I knew who she was. Then I went back to being quiet. She's like, she's little Adolf's wife, and I'm like a big fan of Elon Musk. Oh, okay. Is he Goebbels? He's more of a Himmler, I think. I feel like there's a lot of things that you could say about Stephen Miller's wife before you got to her looks. Hey, little G-Wagon. What's up, man? Are we all that far above the implied move? I mean, I'm sure the MM's not happy with it, but most of the move occurred in like the overnight session, so. Is the lower I am a dream? Probably unlikely. I said if we opened over 68.80, it's just bullish. Because bulls are gonna sell the shitty puts with no premia. I bet you're pretty happy with NOV. I'm not unhappy with it. It's had a nice little 7% move up today. You're all welcome. You know what else I'm happy with? Halliburton. And Schlumberger. All of them. Just happy with all of them. I'm not a fan of any sports ball. Thoughts on Netflix? It looked bearish the last time someone had me look at it. Still looks bearish. Can I pick the song that plays when I upgrade to Pigeon Whale? Sure. Where do you think SLB tops out? You already missed it. Why are you asking me questions about it? You had to be in before the invasion. So I'm trying to chase it. Gherk 2026, bearish or bullish? Fucked. $2025 was fucked too. SPX up 16%. At least all the Santa rally people got fucked. That was cool. That was not an answer. Yes, it was. Fucked is the same as more volatility. I would say just volatile until something breaks. Japan's hiking though, so that'll be fun. Definitely gets us closer to something breaking. Ooh, Janopix is fun because it breaks down the dispersion trades. And then we have to see how confident people are in repositioning dispersion leaving January. Japan hiking hasn't even affected the yen yet. Japanese yields are still just going up. Dollar is back down again. That's cool. My company gave us all Copilot licenses today. So far, it's about as useful as an intern. Is it even as useful as an intern? At least an intern is like a free DoorDash driver. And you don't have to pay the premium on delivery costs. You just set all your orders to pick up. It's like 20% off. I think the important thing here is going to be China's response. China's response to the US. And China's probably waiting to respond until they have a better idea of what the US plans to do, which is very unclear at the moment. And then also probably spend some time determining their relationship with Machado. But, I mean, we've disrupted a very big chunk of China's oil supply. I'm sure they're not going to be fucking happy about it. 21st century scramble for Africa. Next stop, Nigeria. Give me one sec. All right. I've heard about American oil companies not investing into Venezuela that much because they've already spent so much money getting supply from Canada. Thoughts? Yeah, that's a distinct possibility. Exxon's already lost a ton of money there. I think Chevron's the only company that's still operational there. But I'm sure the US government could give them a bunch of money. And convince them to invest that on their behalf. You're looking for a higher high before a reversal in January. It could be same high. It doesn't have to be a higher one, but yes. Yes, I am. Or similar high. Let's say within within like 30 basis points of the prior high. So what are you looking for? GM? Looking a little bearish. Starting to. There's a tiny bit of support at 80, but not much. Okay. Head and shoulders. Seems to be up on today's news. I don't see how they're a beneficiary of Venezuela. Maybe cheaper gasoline, more truck sales. Yeah, support at 80, but positioning is really pretty thin out there. Could be a good opportunity for selling calls. That's on RH with the update. Hmm. I mean, it looks like it's got its breakout. The weekly calls bought all the way out to like 220, 245. And next week out to like 240. That person's an idiot. Although that might be a spread. Maybe. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I would say 210, 224.50 are the next two probably fairly important upside levels. Falling back under 200 would probably be a little bit bearish. But just consolidation, I think. Is it possible to lose 6,900 today? It is, but it's unlikely. Oh, that was Euro I. As a working man who has done nothing but lose money while trading, how can I generate preserved wealth that's safe from inflation-driven debt destruction in the U.S.? Well, you could have gotten debt. That way your debt could be destroyed by inflation. Have you tried just not trading the things you're trading? Like trading something else? Have you thought about selling 45 to 60 DTE calls and just closing them at 50%? I did buy a house in 2022. Okay, there you go. Look at that. Just hope the dollar doesn't go down. I bought gold with debt. How am I doing? Actually killing it. I only have one gold contract left, and it makes me sad. Although I did go long gold at like 2150, so... Oh god, not miners. Come on. Okay, miners will be able to get financing. But then they'll need to spend all that money to get the gold out of the rocks they own. Should I mention again how awesome NOV was as a pickles pick? Remember when Dunkston was like talking shit about how NOV was like a really bad play? Do you keep exposure on various commodities? Nat gas, silver, gold, copper. I have exposure to copper, and I had gold exposure. Well, a lot of it at one point, very little now. But generally speaking, no, I'm not just sitting on big piles of commodities unless I see some sort of advantage in sitting on some big pile of commodities. There was a fairly extended period of time where I would buy oil every time it went above $70 a barrel. God, that was fun. No, I bought gold back in, what was it, like 2023. I started talking about buying gold and pickles picks. Um and just getting some exposure to like gold futures or GLD, because everything was fucked, and the U.S. fiscal situation was terrible, and I was like, man, central banks are awfully overexposed to the dollar. What in the world could they possibly hedge the dollar with? Now we all know. Banks seem hell-bent on funding the AI build-out. Yeah, that's great. It's going to be really hard to maintain their status as a prime dealer if they're just buying up all of Apple, Meta, Nvidia, Google, Amazon's debt. The 2023 dynamics. I mean, yeah, they haven't changed much. That's why gold keeps going up. I probably would have bought gold at a lower price. But yeah, I mean, I don't think central banks will let deflation happen. So the only alternative is to keep pumping. I mean, they don't have a choice. Right? They'll just keep pumping into deflation. So it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't really matter, right? How they get there. But yeah, commodities are doing well. However, those commodities are dollar denominated. It's not exactly like our president is stable. What's your take on lithium? I don't know. There's a lot of it. It's not nearly as rare as it appears. There's some technological risk, but I would say that the bigger risk to lithium is that it's it has like sentimental scarcity, but there's no actual scarcity. I would say that it would probably pump hard on controls. I don't know anything about SGML. Brazilian lithium miner? Yeah. Yeah, fuck that. Less economic output, even more pressure on metals. No, commodities would tank in the event of a recession. Probably. At least energy would tank. And then gold would start to get sold because the hedging value against the dollar would be realized. Recession's already happening. But, we're going to lie about it and stuff for a while. What about it? Probably support at 905. Fairly equivalent high there. I will say if the right shoulder of this fails, so we slip under 6908, that's probably pretty ugly. But I would look for support. Profits on what? That's GMO? Oh. I don't know. You can like hang in it and hope for more geopolitical instability. However, if any of that turns on Brazil, oof. And they've been pretty outspoken about not liking what Trump's doing. And Trump doesn't like people being outspoken about not liking him. It's a tenuous situation. Yeah, I think those are sold. Read too much about those. Quite a bit of call buying going on at 6905. Some calls bought back at 6920. Puts bought at 10. The overly negative carry does incentivize a bit of long gamma here, probably. Sold put support's kind of far from spot, 68.95. If we look on the daily, mostly down here. A little bit of weakness. Ooh, some of the 6900 puts getting bought back. 6915, 20 calls. 6910 puts keep being bought. Squeezing out sold puts at 6905 would be tumultuous. It opens up like another $10 move to the downside. Well, options are well, they're pricing up, I guess, but earlier today they were cheaper. Like, puts back at the first test of 20 were really good. Here, this recent high, they were alright. But yes, long gamma is not. That's just where the pricing advantage is. It doesn't tell you anything about directionality. I wouldn't go anywhere near PBR right now. Although I haven't been interested in PBR in years, so. I sold it all back when it was like 17 bucks. And they still paid a dividend. Well, they still do pay a dividend, but it's not nearly as good as it used to be. I mean, long gamma can just be like straddles or strangles. There's certain Gherkin wings that are slightly longer gamma, depending on the shape. But generally, those benefit from like whipsaw price action like this. This kind of price action is really good for scalping gamma. So buying like the upside resistance and the downside supports. Like if you went long the 10 here, where the down or like 69.05, you would have bought a very cheap option and made a lot of money off of the shift from 15 down to like 69.08. Same here, you know, buying the upside resistance when we tested the downside support. But also straddles and strangles can be really good because the put and the call are both relatively cheap. The volatility return premium on them is negative, which disincentivizes the sellers. So you get a little less strangling. Short strangling. But in a scenario like this, market makers are buying the dip and selling the upside. So you already have a mechanical system built in for buy low, sell high. All long options are positive gamma. Does the MM hate being above the expected move? I mean, we opened above it, so it's... I mean, probably a lot of that loss was already realized in the early part of the day. But yeah, they're not a fan of it. Long gamma tends to be beneficial in the front when VRP is negative. Volatility return premium. You would own a fucking Dodge Ram, Danimal. The weird Baba neutral is falling off the earth fixed itself after the OI update this morning. Nice. How much? There you go. Looks a little bit more normal. Although, I still don't think that changes the fact that there's just big resistance at 60. Very slippery climb up. I think GM Rising kind of helps the bull case, but yeah. Oh, that's the downside. Upstart's better over 50. Strictly. Still pressuring those 6905 short puts here. Give us the end of day magic prediction. I mean, right now it looks like we're gonna close at like 6908, but I don't know. We might slip. Like local positioning. Hmm. Yeah, Tesla got a little bit of a bump today. Still having a hard time getting back over 460, which I feel like a failure here is just continued bearishness on that. I'm trading too much for my emotions and put a lot of energy into a Python bot recently. Backtested over 20 years, annualized 18 to 20%. Curious your opinions on this. I mean, the first thing I would make sure is that you're not overfitting on your back tests. But there's no better test for a trading bot than a live, like a live market. You're really not gonna know how it performs, regardless of your back testing until you put it into action. And then also, keep in mind that it's gonna have some kind of modifiers as volatility regimes change. It's never so simple as just hit play and watch it print money. At least not since the early days of like high frequency trading. There's definitely a reason every programmer in the world isn't a billionaire. Slow's good. Easier to manage, easier to troubleshoot, but definitely doesn't change its ability to fuck shit up. Like, does it have redundancy and order placement? Which is a really important thing that a lot of people forget. Because you can't simply have it be like, oh, buy and then sell. That doesn't actually work. Like, you need to ensure that it buys, you need to ensure that it buys at the right price, and you need to ensure that it will continue to try to buy at the right price, even if it doesn't get a fill. And then you need to do the same thing on the stop or the sell side of that. So you have to have order input redundancies in place. I actually know like a couple guys that specialize in building the like algo programs for funds, and they are all like 10x engineers and make a fortune, and their job is hard as fuck. So it's definitely not an easy thing to do. No, not dork. One day, we'll get them there. Yeah, a lot of it put selling incentivized down here at 69.05 as price drops. So as those puts start to squeeze, people are going to try to sell them first and bounce the market. And then if they fail, all of the puts will capitulate and will dump. DFGF are real thin, so there's not a lot of market maker interference on this, which leaves the bulls a little bit overexposed, but that's what they get for selling volatility at a loss. How low can it squeeze? 68.95-ish. That's where like the bigger pile of sold puts is, and they'd probably reverse off that. Maybe if they shift it up and sell really hard into the drop, 6,900. Of course, Jimbo. I know you've been around, man. Happy to help. I mean, yeah, make sure all of your redundancies are in place. Make sure that you're not risking too much capital on initial test runs, or that you have something to paper trade it set up. And then, monitor the performance of the actual algo rather than focusing on the profits. Make sure that it's doing all of the things that you need it to do. Then feed it real money. And slowly. Nothing like having a fucking bug wipe out like 100 grand. Especially because those any trading algo is going to be extremely reliant on probably multiple third-party software implementations. Alpaca's not bad. I've heard good things about it. I've not used it a lot, but I've definitely heard it's not too bad. I think it's one of the preferred ones by algo traders. The most unaddressed problem I see with algo traders generally is that they backtest shit and they implement it and it does well for a little while, but they don't have anything else on deck. And the real strategy to being successful at algo trading is like you need an entire like book of like viable trading strategies that you can implement in various regimes. And people just don't do that. People are like, oh, this is the thing, it's gonna work, it's great, and then the regime changes and they lose all the money they made. And they don't have anything else on deck to replace that. Hey, there we go. Here's the dump. Oppie, once I really get this one ironed out, I plan on working on a different trading style to help build out that deck of cards, so to say. Yeah, that's important. Definitely do that. Have several and be ready to implement them when the market regime favors that style of trading. It'll also help give you a lot of practice determining what the market favors at any given time. I tried building trading bots years ago and determined I didn't understand the problem I was working on enough to automate it. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a really that's a good way of putting a fairly common failure point. I'm sure if you revisited it today, you would have a much better idea. But they are they're very work intensive. They seem easy, but they're a lot easier when you have a team of engineers watching them all day. And you've spent thousands of hours programming in fail-safes. A former major hedgy quant struck out on his own and did great for a while, but then they found out how to block him entirely. Yeah, that's another thing is you have to worry about like dealers are very good at picking up on automation. And so you have to have yeah, it gets very tricky. That's more in the high frequency space where you have to worry about that, but it's yeah, there's a lot of problems that can come up there. I'm not gonna go too into detail on that, but it's it can be let's say that there's benefits to the randomness of human action. So I just close my eyes when choosing what strike to buy. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about, but okay. Ooh, we rejected off of DF. Interesting. Mm. $16.75p is cheap as fuck. Of course it is. Because it's not going in the money. Did you close your 3% out of the money pits yet? No? No, no, no. Yes, Winter. Hmm. Wait, by when? When does the US have to take control of part of Greenland? Do those sold puts at 69.05 close? Some of them. Not all of them. But a bunch. Yeah, a bunch did. 6,900 too. There's still a lot of sold puts at 68.95 though. Which was my downside target here. We haven't quite hit it. If everyone installed solar, our energy bills are going to come down. That went really well. Well, not everyone installed solar. That was the problem. There are people that like, no, that's 5G gonna cause cancer. I'm gonna keep burning oil on my basement to heat my house. I'm gonna park my Dodge Ram in my living room. Yeah, that sounds right. Mm. Mm. Decent head and shoulders on the 4-hour, no? Not really. I would say it's an inverse head and shoulders till we fail 6,800. Retest or fail 6,800. Today's bounce makes it look a lot more like we've already seen the right shoulder of that. I secured the relationship with my second wife in a Dodge Ram, so I have nothing bad to say about them. So roomy, anything goes. Is Farmville still holding his fucking pets? Dude hates money sometimes. I had to average down to 300 contracts of 6,900p to eventually close plus 44%. Jesus Christ. I asked you like 40 minutes ago to say 6,900 was a fortress, so he would cut them. Oh, poor Farmville. Mm. Mm. Hey, back at 607. Never use trailing stops. It feels like cheating. Yeah, they're nice. I think they're gonna get it above 10 here. I mean, they could try. It seems difficult. We've got, what, 45 minutes left? Maybe into close. I would say probably not earlier than that, though. Nine 69.69 is today and every day's target for bulls. That's the only thing that makes sense. Yeah, it does look that way. Hal's doing quite well. Hmm. Chat? Boring on today. No, I don't. Charm's like flat here. That's just not doing anything. Wait, why puts for tomorrow? I mean, is there any like planned announcement or something tonight? There's been quite a lot of put selling today, under 6,900. I feel like bulls would try to hold it at least into the data. It's not that slippery. We're above GN a little bit. What if we weren't? But we are. %of my plays are just based on gambling intuition. Friday has loads of data, so if it's true, so does Wednesday. I would say Wednesday is where we're more likely to see volatility rear its head. Tesla looks like it's coiling up to fall. Jesus, we have a lot of time. I don't know. Let's probably sit here. I thought this is where we would get pinned. There's quite a lot of sold calls to the upside. I mean, there's something there to squeeze, but the downside support didn't strengthen with the first failure. Are you gonna open a fly at spot? It's a little risky. You'd be better off risk reward opening something out of the money. Mm. Getting some more sold puts. It's a bit of buying at the 69.10 strike on the call side. MOC is going to send us to 69.20. I don't think the imbalance should be that big. We've been fucking trading flat all day. It's like a fucking, what, $15 range. Nvidia, Intel, AMD, CEOs tonight, they're all going to purchase each other shares. Investment. The numbers are behind people's names or because they haven't changed their screen name since YouTube changed the update. Or since YouTube updated them and created ads. Which I still fucking hate. It's annoying too because I remember everyone by their screen names, but they're like old screen names or like their chosen screen names are different than the ones like associated with their YouTube account. Yeah, but now you're the Cobra 37, which is like makes me feel like I'm playing fucking Xbox Live. Wrong way, bulls. Yeah, that's closer to Cobra. I think I need to fade into the abyss. Why? No, I'm not talking about the live chat ratings. I'm talking about like TubeSock being TubeSock 69 or Jason Bowers being Jason Bowers 1085. Yeah, what's wrong, Cobra? You were killing it on GS, and then you bought a bunch of out of the money puts, and I assume lost that money. So you gotta make it back. You're fine, but you want to fade into the abyss? So you're just being really dramatic? Some of you retain earnings. I've seen it happen before. Use any earnings and degenerate plays. That way I never make money. That's one strategy. I was hoping for 6908, but bulls aren't doing too well holding 6905 right now, so we might slip again. Hmm. Ooh, interesting. Getting sucked into 6,900. Gonna get the 68.95 test? That'd be cool. Hmm. ES tapped 69.40. Not entirely sure that's a support. Just under VWAP. Four minutes left. Calls the upside. Sold put's still at 69.05. Less of them, but still quite a lot of them. Cap at 69.02 to the upside. There we go. Well, SPX filled the upside gap, I think. Got 30 seconds left for bulls to close this shit higher. Ooh, they failed horribly. Yep, still trying for it. Nice. Ding ding. Well, we didn't close below 6,900. Feel like that's kind of a win. Ish. But a lot closer to the implied move for the day. Let's check out the end of day shit. All right. So up, let's see, 64 BPS, exceeding the upside implied move by about 13 bips. A lot of that on the back of being able to open above gamma neutral and get some support from the market makers throughout the intraday. That seemed to lead to a lot of netting off in the bot side positioning, but an accumulation of short puts between like 68.50 and 68.90, probably supporting more upside into tomorrow. However, I think it probably would be beneficial for vol sellers if we fell back into that range a little bit at some point for them to sell more supportive puts. So maybe out here on ES we would see like a pullback towards trend. Pullback towards trend before moving higher would be probably ideal. So like 69.1775 and then mean revert into Wednesday's data. But yeah, I guess we'll see if they can hold this level. Seems a little unlikely. This was already pretty slippery through the intraday. Over here, yields at the top end of the curve falling, so a little bit more rotation into bonds, mostly in the belly and the 2 and the 5s. But yields coming down on the 10, 20, and 30 as well a little bit. Why are these all disconnected? Commodities doing really, really well today after the geopolitical risk rose with Venezuela. Gold up almost 3%, silver up 4.6%, copper 5.24%. Agricultural commodities up 144 points, and oil ending the day up 185. The oil move's actually kind of interesting, but obviously, BRICS, OPEC, very much in charge of oil prices right now, and they're not going to look kindly on the U.S. Doing a little regime change in a major oil producing nation. Correlation didn't really bounce back today, but 3-month correlation and one month core both stayed fairly stable after the drop on Friday. So throughout most of today's session, actually 3-month correlation rising just a little bit. Interestingly, volatility up today, both on VX 3-month, and cash VIX. probably a little bump and move with the move in yields. So should see some volatility returning to bonds. I think that'll accelerate into the end of the week as we start to get the labor data and labor data revisions. New all-time high on the carry leverage, getting real close to a full 10x there, but leverage on the front end starting to kind of decline a bit. Forward yield on volatility at negative 9.28%. And a little bit of pressure, quite a little bit of pressure from silver. I mentioned last week that this looked like silver was going to run, and we definitely see that today. A little bit of pressure from silver on the carry trade, and that's starting to increase that cumulative cost to carry. Skew falling pretty sharply over the last several sessions. Why are these so annoying? Breadth looks like shit. I think that improved a little bit today with Dow and Russell moving up so sharply. But ES and NQ ended up lagging despite having the lead in the overnight session. Fed fund futures fairly unchanged. The 10-2 now at 70, which is pretty significant. Possibly getting a little bit closer to that being a recession signal. And we're seeing increased correlation between VX and cash VIX as short volatility positioning fails to find a strong foothold in the market. Leverage bounced back a little bit today with the move up in the market, but remains substantially lower than it's been over the last 3 to 4 months. And the spread between SOFR and IORB still about 10 points wide. So SOFR sitting at the standing repo rate, about 10 points higher than the IORB. Real time, like SOFR futures, kind of chilling in the middle there, but not really dropping substantially, down 1 point from Friday. Buy volume was fairly equivalent to Friday, so a bit of mean reversion there. Out here on the technical side of things, we obviously got a breakout after we closed above the 20 MA. We gapped over the 68.82 resistance, but we failed the 69.20 test, and we're rejected off of that fully into close here. 6,900 is actually not that important of a level, but I would look to see what resistance or support we open closer to tomorrow. Closer to 69.20 gives a little bit of a bullish bias for a push back up towards all-time highs, but opening under 6,900 would start to look like this wedge is failing a bit. We did slip through the bottom of the wedge on Friday, and that's not a good sign. I mean, that we filled that gap and then we had to drop down another $20 to find any buyers. And so, that does lead to some weakness in this bounce. And if we slip back under the 20-day moving average, it's very likely that this trend fails, which opens up, a move down to like 67.20 or even like 65.21. This is on the daily, but there's quite a lot of room to the downside here for us to start trying to find some support. So keep an eye on that. This is obviously the consolidation starting to get very tight. So, and then actually that's a little bit off. There we go. Oop. Why is it dragging the whole thing? Don't drag the whole thing. Just move. There we go. There. I think that's about it. Looks like there's a little bit of rotation out of tech still ongoing. Health tech, which has been doing really well, is seeing some sell-offs. Broader electronic tech was doing okay, but the big movers like AVGO, Nvidia, Apple, not doing so great. Google and Microsoft pretty flat on the day. Meta showing some improvements. But Tesla and Amazon mostly carrying the Mag 7. Obviously some big moves in oil, and some process industries, industrial services, Commercial services are doing pretty well, and producer manufacturing. This is likely where we're seeing the Venezuela trade occur, across these kind of interconnected energy and energy support industries and services. But yeah, obviously it remains to be seen what we're doing with Venezuelan oil, and that rotation could get shifted back pretty hard if it doesn't appear like we're going to be getting any near-term access. So if you're like long Hal or Schlumberger or NOV or Kinder Morgan or anything like that, just be really cautious with your gains, because the process to getting, you know, U.S. oil field development companies into Venezuela could be very long. And financials doing pretty well today, with the drop in yields. Those largely carrying the S&P, I think. Anyway, that's about it. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a good night. Later.